Welcome to the Happy in the Mess podcast. We are your hosts, Marlena, Sherry, and Matthew. We are therapists and coaches, and we want to share our own stories with you, as well as the wisdom, insights, and tips we've learned along the way. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Welcome to this episode of the Happy in the Mess podcast. I'm Sherry, and I'm here with our resident experts, Matthew and Marlena. Today, we are talking about success in the mess. As a reminder, please like, share, comment, rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to. I've been thinking a lot about success this week. What is it? How we get it? And how the experience of success can be messy. I can't wait to hear what our experts have to say about success today. Before we get started, let's hear what each of our coaches are up to and where we can find them. Matthew, want to kick us off here?
Sure. I am at Matthew E. Morgan. That's Matthew E. Morgan.com. And I run the Misfit Refuge, which is kind of a place just for all of us neurodivergent folks to get together, share some of our struggles, and hopefully get encouragement. So people can find me and resources there or at Misfit Refuge.
No, that's great. Thank you. Marlena, what about for you?
Yeah, you can find me at coachmarlena.com and get some free meditations. I help single people stop desperate dating, start drawing and love effortlessly. Right now, I'm working one-on-one with folks, but I hope to be running a group soon. But you can check me out there and book a consult call for free to see if we'd be a good fit.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I am Sherry Timko, and probably the best place to find me is in my Facebook group. It's Date Night Community. I just organized a whole bunch of resources into the guides. So you can go there and if you followed along the guides, you could probably solve most of the couple relationship problems that you're facing. So it's also where I hang out. So that would be the place. All right, so let's start with just the basic idea of what is success. Now, maybe this sounds like an obvious question, but I suspect that you guys might have different measurements that you use or different guidelines that you use. So can you guys share with us what is success?
Yeah, I think it changes. It's obviously a very individual point of view. And the first thing is you were asking that question, I thought like my definition of success has changed even over the years for where I'm at. At one point it was making money or being financially successful, and then there was a switch of like I had an opportunity to make a lot more money, but it required me driving 2 hours, a day plus. And so success for me was launching my own business that could be home. This is prior to the pandemic. So that, my success was being able to spend time with my son, and jam with him and do those things. So I think there's a small narrative of our success, what there might be in that moment. But then I think a lot of times too, success might be, are we just living according to our values? So that's more the meta narrative of success.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
I was going to say the same thing. I think success changes as you age or just your priority shift. When I was younger, I was very much a hyperachiever and I would go for, the degrees and the credentials and the more learning and the education and hopefully money along with that, but not always. But like there was some measure of satisfaction with these achievements, but it was very ephemeral for me. And so eventually I realized like that wasn't actually satisfying, like acquiring more letters after my name or what have you. So now it's like, am I having a good work-life balance? Am I, prioritizing my health, my relationships? And does my income allow for some fun and play? But, it's not so consuming my job or otherwise, like, are my things running me or am I running my things? So I think for a lot of singles, I just wanted to speak out to my population really and say like, a lot of times I think success for singles probably means the thing that they don't have, like having a relationship and the marriage and the kids and this white picket fence and like 2.5, kids or whatever. And like how, because singles now outnumber the married, how that we've really had to redefine what success is, because I think sometimes don't feel like they're a full adult until they're married. And sometimes their parents don't treat them as such until they're married. It's like you're not considered an adult until you've been attached to someone else. And, part of my work is like breaking through that barrier, redefining success, because that is not everyone's story and may never be someone's story. That doesn't mean that they're not successful in life. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for speaking directly to that, because I know that you've talked a lot in different settings about how it is hard for singles to think of success when society has this really big value on whether they're successful or not. All right, so what you guys shared is that in order to be successful, you also need to be in tune with what those values and what you personally need for success. So as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about our topic, which is happy in the mess. And what happens when success is in the mess? And I thought of a few situations where it might be messy. And I wanted to get your take on how you manage that success in the mess. So what I was thinking of is success when it comes in a lousy package. Like you get that goal, but the circumstances they don't feel very good. Or success because someone else has failed. Or failure that you later realize is success. And the last one was getting someone else's version of your success. So it's not really what you were shooting for, but someone else feels like they have just given you what they think you needed and what they think you were going for. So those are the scenarios that I came up with. Maybe I should check in with you guys whether you have other scenarios where success feels messy that we should add to that.
I feel like any of those could be their own episode. I mean, these are all big things that we really deal with just in just in our daily lives and what we're doing. The concept a lot of times as we're talking about success might be, if I can be a history nerd for a second, is the Pyrrhic victory. Where the success comes at such a great cost that we've achieved our goal, but it's done at such a loss that continued progress a lot of times is unattainable. So I think that kind of filters in there as well. But really, any of these situations, sometimes just redefining what we think or what it might have been is super important.
Yeah, no, that's a good example.
Well, and I was just about to say, I mean, talking about let's talk about that first one, success and lousy package, or for me, that it makes me think of like success, having achieved something and realized it wasn't what it was cracked up to be, and then not really enjoying the place and sort of foregoing the external success of that thing. Very concretely, we were talking before the show, like I was in divinity school and I was thinking I was going to get ordained as a priest, and then when I got into that process and got that education, I realized that is absolutely not what I wanted for myself, and backtracked, and it felt a little like a failure at first because I was being offered the opportunity to pursue this path. And finally, I finally jumped through all the hoops and I was getting the graduate education for it. And then I was like, oh, I can't do this. This is not in alignment with me. And perhaps that is so redefining success in that sense. Like a success for me is now being in alignment with my own priorities and values. And I didn't know it was out of alignment until I got almost all the way in. Backtrack.
Yeah. Yeah, that also reminds me of success when someone else is in crisis. So you finally achieve that thing, but then someone that you really care about is facing something and you feel like you can't really celebrate that because that would take something away from your care or empathy for them.
Now, are you talking with that? Are you talking? Are they experiencing a lack of success because of what we have achieved? I mean, are they correlated where it's like, my success came at the expense of somebody else, or are we talking that this is something where I'm successful, they are not, so I don't want to be all like, haha, I'm great and sorry your life stinks, kind of moment.
Yeah, I think it includes all of that. The
Okay.
specific situation I was thinking of was like getting to graduation, but then a family member dies, and like having to balance that, like you earned this thing. It was years in the making, but then this thing comes in the midst of that and it kind of trumps it.
Yeah, that's hard because really uh, the ideal thing would be to separate these emotions. You can in fact own the emotion of being happy and joyful that graduation happened, and then very sad that somebody passed away. And those can happen at both times, but when you're dealing with different people, different people's feelings, that's where communication really comes in. Maybe handling some disappointment, maybe handling some other problems like that. Go back and listen to the previous episodes, and get some hints on that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marlena, what about you? You have any thoughts about how to handle success when it's also messy?
Mm. Well, I think, like Matthew said, if it comes in the midst of an unrelated tragedy happening at the same time, ideally you would be able to sort of mourn and celebrate in separate spaces, or to allow yourself the diversity and variety of feelings that are showing up. And I would also say, when you talk about getting the success and then not feeling happy, I hear celebrities talk about this all the time. Like Jim Carrey, I think he had this famous quote, like, if money made me happy, or success, like, then I would be by now. Like, I think he was referencing his own sort of depression. Don't quote me on that, but it's so true. Fame and money do not equal success. And I know there's this famous Gallup poll study that said around $75,000 a year was like the place where people felt most satisfied. Obviously, this is pre-inflation and pre-COVID, right? So it's probably higher than that. But there does come a point where there's like a law of diminishing returns happening when it comes to salary. Like after a certain point, you're not going to feel, and we know this now, where the research validates this, like you're not going to feel better, or about your circumstances, life, or yourself, even if you're being uber wealthy. So I mean, I just find it really interesting. We have tons of research out there sort of looking at this question and trying to figure out what is the package of success. And truly, we can't define it for every single person. Um, but I would hate to get to the end of my life and realize that I lived someone else's expectations of success. Or, and I love that question. At the end of my life, what will I want to look back on and be proud of, or how will I want to have conducted myself? And I'm really into the spiritual woo stuff, as everyone knows. And like when I listen to these accounts of like a afterlife sort of reflections, if you're into that sort of thing, or what people think of, it's usually not about how many possessions they have and how much money they made. And even as a chaplain in a hospital, that is not what people talked about when they were on their deathbed or very sick. They talked about their relationships 100% of the time. Not one of them said, I'm really going to miss my boat. Or, like, I really wish I would have bought this other thing. Or, no, that is not what people discuss when it comes down to your last hours or when you're very sick.
We My family, we watched and I'm going to mess up the interviewer, so I'm not going to say who it is. We watched the interview with Jeremy Renner, who plays Hawkeye in the Marvel series, after his accident, with the snowplow basically running over him. And what really stood out, of course, I'm watching everything with a therapist mind because that's what I do. For him, it was a tragic accident, and trigger warning, it's gruesome, and they're very detailed with what he went through. Um, and my first thought was, oh, it's great that he had that money to provide all of that care for him. But there was that point where I looked and I went, wait a minute, no, like the doctors only did so much, and having family there and that support, and his nephew and sisters and mom, and they're all flocked in there. And I went, wow, it's like that's what really spoke to me was, you know, that's what I'm going to assume that's what success was for him, was cultivating these relationships. And in fact, what happened was even protecting his nephew in the midst of this.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, absolutely, success is not always what we think it's going to be, and not always what we're working for.
Yeah,
And
so
it,
you guys are bringing in this idea that success is often intangible stuff
Hmm.
that
yeah,
adds to our life and our experience.
Hmm. I would also like what we're talking about too makes me think that success is often tied to maybe some people pleasing or some expectation of either society or family or others that we should be at a certain place because these because we're not defining success usually in school. It's not taught, what really matters is your relationships and how you're treating people and whatnot. It's always about what career you're going to do and how much money you're going to make and what is your outside life going to look like. Um, and that is, it's harder to teach the intangible and focus on that too. It's just the thought I was having that perhaps we all suffer a little bit of people pleasing or hyperachieving, especially in this culture when we talk about success.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a lot of those expectations just kind of
Hmm.
built into us from childhood.
Hmm.
that what jumped to
Absolutely. Go ahead.
what jumped to mind is the popular kiddo. I was sitting down with one of my kiddo clients, and they were talking about how they weren't popular in school. They weren't part of that in crowd, even though they always wanted to be. So instead, they found a group of people that vibed the same way that they vibed, and they got together and they hung out and they nerded out and they did all these fun things. I go, that to me says that you were popular, and they
Hmm.
had, you know, but it had written like this was not a success because they weren't XYZ. I was like, no, like you found your people. And success doesn't always mean, and especially in people pleasing, it doesn't mean adding up to what everybody thinks or what the status quo might be, or even that majority. I mean, if you can find a handful of 5 6 people who really get you and love your weirdness and let you be who you are, and that's especially for my neurodivergent folks out there. I mean, that's success right there.
Yeah,
Hmm.
no, definitely. All right, so we've been talking about success, but we've almost exclusively been talking about success in terms of goals. Even in relationships, we're talking about goals. What about success of the journey? Because sometimes we get to that goal and we realize the journey wasn't much fun. So, how do we do success in that journey?
Gratitude comes to mind. I know it's a cliche answer, but being aware and grateful of where you are. I remember having sort of a re-triggering of a trauma when I was in the Peace Corps, and they hooked me up with a social worker over the phone to talk to for a little while because I was really struggling, and I didn't want to what they call PCOS. I didn't want to leave my assignment. I wanted to stay and make it through, but the journey was not pleasant. Like it really got unpleasant through that time. And I remember just a plug in for getting your counseling and coaching in, but talking to this person and it really helped. And it gave me such a simple exercise while I was there, but it really started transforming my experience and perspective. She said, I want you to think of 3 things you like every day, 3 things you liked about on that day. And it was so simple, but it started getting me back into my environment and my body. And so I would say things like, I really enjoyed the rain yesterday, and I enjoyed that fresh tomato we picked, and I enjoyed seeing my friends in town. And like just finding those little things about my experience that were pleasant started to turn me around. And I didn't have to leave. Like I didn't have to like end my assignment because I had been triggered. And so I just think of like it sound just because it's simple doesn't make it not effective, right? In mindfulness practices and being present. And so that was just so helpful and it was so simple.
Mhm.
Yeah, appreciation is one of my favorite things. It's so powerful and it is so underrated.
Hmm.
What jumped to mind to me, and I'm going to throw a trigger warning here as well, for particularly for child loss, and infertility, for those who are struggling with that and don't want to hear it, skip ahead till I'm not talking anymore. Because I mean, this is hard, and the first thing that jumped to mind when you asked that question about trying to find success along the journey, was, even though I talk about my son a lot, my wife and I went through 13 years of infertility, and including one child loss in the midst of it. And it was like, those were brutal years. Like, I think back on it, and, the cats were giving us, Mother's Day and Father's Day cards instead of the kiddo. And, we found ways it was never perfect. There was always this sense of things weren't the way that we really wanted it to be. And for those that don't want to have kids, that's that this was our success, not theirs. But my wife had always she had really wanted to be a mom, and that from childhood age. Not a mom in childhood age. She wanted to be a mom when she was a child. Just to clarify that part. But she and I, like, we had to practice gratitude. We had to practice awareness. And honestly, the DBT concept of radical acceptance, of just knowing, like, that path is not open to us right now. And so the concept here is maybe what's the next best thing. If I can't have success in what I want, if I can't get the gold, can I fight for the silver? And find the ways to do that, not in the sense of ignoring the hurt, but in spite of it, and using that to push us on. And of course, as our son showed up, there was a tremendous surprise, and we then had to change. But one of the things we've noticed is that helps make us really aware of other people. And when we were talking about success and not rubbing this in somebody else's face, that's we are so aware of the story, and we know that there are people who are not at that same point of the journey, and we always try to give compassion to that, and we wouldn't have had that otherwise.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I know that's still something that you're processing over time. I love this concept of letting the good sit next to the bad. Like, that's okay, because that's the way they present.
And that's life, right? I mean, and practicing, some psychological flexibility in that. And like, it's not so black and white. It's not all good or all bad. It is, we always live in between those places. And it really is like a discipline and a practice to come back to, okay, what is the gift or opportunity in this? Like, or what can I find? I'm not getting the gold, as Matthew said. Can I recognize there's just really great silver here? Like, and again, not ignoring, but having empathy. I don't think you can get there until you have empathy for how hard whatever it is you're going through is.
Yeah. I saw a quote this week. I don't remember who said it, but it was, time flies whether you're having fun or not. And that really stuck with me about this journey, because I think sometimes, I know I get very focused on the goal and will sometimes make sacrifices on the journey, that if I kept that in mind, I don't know that I would always make those sacrifices.
Yeah.
All right. So I know that there are a lot of listeners who are like me, who have trouble celebrating their success. And I definitely was raised with that idea that, you don't want to focus on your success too much. You'll get a big head. So what advice do you have for celebrating your success?
My first thing is you celebrate. It's complete opposite. You celebrate your failures too. You balance it out. The scene from Meet the Robinsons, where the little kiddo comes forward and he's trying to, like, the family puts pressure, like, you got to do this, you got to fix this, and it was the peanut butter jelly machine, like, you got to fix this thing, and he's he just panics and he's trying to do it, and he fails and it explodes everywhere, and the family's like, yes, and they're just, and they love it. And I think if we can celebrate our failures, right, then we can also celebrate our successes. We're in that moment of, like, I'm just going to glitter party whatever happens, and it's not a participation trophy thing, but it's like, you know what, this is all part of the stepping stones for that. And I think when we acknowledge all that, hopefully that helps us from getting the big head, because it's like, no, like, there were a lot of things that fell apart to get here, or there were cost a lot to get here, and it's okay to celebrate the success of it.
I love that. Let's have a glitter party for whatever's going on. Yeah. Glitter's sort of bad for the environment, but I get what you're saying.
Not glitter
virtual
per se.
Glitter. Yes.
Well, I also think that celebration is like transition time, like allowing yourself transition time. I often think I've struggled with celebrations too, and I've like gone right into the next thing without taking a beat. And like, the celebration may not be like this giant party per se, but it could be just like allowing yourself breathing room before jumping into the next thing. I know that sounds a little lame, but I just think about I didn't go to my undergraduate uh, graduation. I don't like sitting through ceremonies. I thought that was really lame. I didn't want to be there. So instead, I booked myself a trip to Italy before I had to go into the workforce. And so I just went to Italy for 2 weeks with a friend. And that was like a different type of celebration, not your typical graduation celebration. Like I skipped out on all the formal stuff and went for the thing I enjoyed. And so, it was just a nice transition for me. And so I just think about also redefining what celebration might be for you. It may not be
Mhm.
a glitter party, it might be allowing yourself to do nothing for 2 weeks. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that you went to Italy as your celebration.
Mhm.
So I had one of those little aha moments as I was listening to you guys, and it was that maybe we should be celebrating our being, not our doing.
Ooh,
Hmm.
that's good.
Yeah.
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 And so then it would be celebrating every day we're alive, every day we're experiencing.
Hmm.
And we are at our core human beings, and I think up to that point, so many times we celebrate our human doings and not who we are. I think that's a fabulous take home.
Hmm. And
Right.
not wait to like for the reward. I mean, like I love the work reward thing, but I just want to say sometimes like not wait to give yourself a steak dinner if that's what you want. Like it doesn't always have to be until you do something, right? I mean, that's the point you're trying to make. I think is like you don't have to wait until an achievement happens in order to be good to yourself.
Yeah. And there should be a level of good to yourself that you do because you're a human being. So
Hmm.
I'll have to think about that one more because I think that's gonna be one of those that I'm gonna be pondering for a while.
I think parental wounds are starting to show up in everybody who's listening to this because it's just like how many times were we raised with that? Hey, good boy, good girl, we did this, versus, hey, I'm proud of you for being here and showing up, and
Yeah, let's just get a
so,
cake because you're here,
yep,
not because it's your yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What a powerful message that would be in childhood.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Any last thoughts or tips that you want to share with our audience before we close up today?
I like that idea of just being there and being present. With my neurodivergent folks, we were just talking about this week of like we try so hard to build boundaries and keep people from sapping our energy. And we were just talking about how sometimes we're too successful at that, and we've built this wall around us now, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm good, I'm not overwhelmed, but I'm also completely by myself. And sometimes that at that point you look and you're like, okay, I've achieved success, but this is not where I want to be. This isn't the success that I want. So it's okay to be present. It's okay to, just take in that second best, or to work with what's right in front of you. Just radically accept everything, and just be there, be present, and love yourself for who you are, and love other people for who they are.
Hmm. My younger self would not have understood these concepts at all. Like I was constantly chasing achievements and what looked like outside success. And now I realize just how ephemeral again all of that is. And so I agree with you, Matthew. It's just the idea of presence and like really enjoying where I'm at no matter what. There's always something to appreciate in the moment. Because it'll pass and it'll change because that's just the nature of things. This too shall pass.
Yeah.
Yes. So I have a quote to end us out today. I found this one this week as well. It's from Mary Engelbreit. Um, Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you do with what happens to you.
Mhm.
I thought that's a lot of how we get to be successful is really in how we think about what happens as much as what happens along the way.
Hmm.
It's good.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been another stimulating conversation where I'm going to walk away thinking about some of the topics we've talked about for a while. I hope you will as well. Please leave us a comment or like, share, review. I don't know, all those things. Um, um, we love hearing from our listeners. We find it's such a privilege for us to come into your lives and talk about these topics. So reach out. If you can reach out to us as a group, or you can reach out to us individually. All right, until next week, we'll see you then.